Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mitch Sebastian, 22 years old from Spencer, Iowa. We graduated from Spencer High School, class of 2015. But I grew up like your typical little kid, I guess. Complained about going to school. Played some sports. Played soccer throughout my elementary years, and then played some baseball once I got into middle school. Really was never that good at playing sports and in baseball, but my team won the championship that year, so I just tell everybody that I was good. So I tried playing sports, and then I was one of those kids that would ride my bike all over town. Me and my friends, we'd build little ramps, dirt jumps next to my parents' house. Spend our whole summer out there. All of this we had fun doing, but nothing gave me the same feeling as when I rode my snowmobile. That's all I wanted to do was just ride. So that being said, here's my story. Racing from day one. I started riding when I was about 2. You can probably blame my dad and my grandpa for that one. We had a house in town where I grew up. I remember taking a shovel out to the yard and building these little tracks that would circle around the house. I'd be out there for hours and hours, burning tanks of fuel. My parents would have to call me in for dinner. Out in the yard, I'd take the shovel out there, and I'd build these little jumps, pretending I was Tucker Hibbert or Blair Morgan or somebody like that. I'd get like this much air. And if I was really lucky, then we could go out to my grandpa's house. He lived on a few acres of land just north of Spencer. We could go out there to his property and we could build some real tracks. I'd be out riding, and then I'd run out of gas way out by the field, have to run all the way back to the house, grab my dad. He'd come and get me, fill me up with gas, get me back going again. Those were the good days looking back on it. My grandpa was a pretty special person to me. He was so passionate about the racing. He loved everything about it. The evening before we would leave town, before every race, he would stop by the shop to wish us good luck before we left town. Never failed. And then he was always the first one to ask how the weekend went. Whether we won or I crashed and didn't even finish, he was still just as proud. This summer, I lost my grandpa to a severe stroke. His funeral was the day before my 22nd birthday. So this season is in honor of him, and I know he'll be with us every step of the way. I first got hooked on racing when I was about 6. My parents took me to the Junior Snowcross Challenge in Canterbury Park in Shakopee, Minnesota. If I remember correctly, I believe I got last in this race, but I was hooked on racing, that's for sure. Side note, for this event, each of us got paired up with a pro buddy, and my buddy was a longtime Yamaha racer, Nathan Titus. That's why I'm wearing the number 2 here. That was always his number. Me and Nathan were fast forward a little bit, me and Nathan, then we were also teammates once I was first onto the Yamaha team. And then he is now currently my rep that I work with at Fly Racing. So Nathan has truly been with me from the start. Then we moved to drag racing. Did a lot of vintage drags. I won the Heydays junior classes 2 years in a row, 2009 and 10. Won a lot on ice and grass throughout Minnesota. We also did quite a bit of racing around here in the Okoboji area. I won the Tracy Kruger Memorial Speed Run in 2011. And then that one was a big deal for me too, just because of the story behind it, the tragic accident that happened there. And then they decided to retire the trophy and then chose me to take the trophy, and we have that sitting downstairs at the booth. Then for a year, I raced the pro stock class. Here's a shot of me on Rick Richter's Apex. Doug Alger, I believe you get photo credits for this picture.
Duct tape on the red tee, you know.
Yep. Then 2012, we decided to, I was ready to make the next big step. I knew that if I kind of wanted to make my dreams come true, make anything about my racing, I was gonna have to jump in. And then we made the switch to cross country. Really wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. We had pretty good contacts at Yamaha from the drag racing days. So my dad made a couple phone calls. How do you set up a sled for cross country racing? We actually bought this phaser used off of Craigslist and then completely tore it down and then built what we thought was our best shot at a cross country race sled. Looking back on it now, I kind of laugh. Every year I learn so much about riding and sled setup, and to be honest, at that time I didn't even know what I wanted out of a sled, what I wanted it to do, how I wanted it to handle. So yeah, looking back on it, this sled handled not the greatest, that's for sure, but that's all part of the learning curve of terrain racing. But still, with all that, it was still good enough to be the 2013 Core Power Sports Rookie of the Year. Far left, that is Nathan Titus. Next to him is Eric Josephson. He was the old Yamaha race director at that time. And then me, and then Seth Thorson, who was kind of a mentor of mine for a couple years. Also was my mechanic for a season. Then we're getting ready for the 2014-15 season. I was ready to make the move up to a full-size sled, and then got a phone call that I always dreamed of. Mitch, we'd like you to be part of Yamaha's factory team this year. And then got that phone call. I was kind of speechless. Okay, what do I do now? When do I start? I was ready to go. What's next? The season couldn't have came soon enough at that time. I was based out of their shop in Minneapolis, which was still challenging with me living around here, because my sled and everything stayed up there. So we did a lot of traveling back and forth from the cities. So we would just go up there to their shop, hop in the truck, and then we'd go on to the races from there. We had a pretty awesome season that year. Won a few races, learned a lot. The resources that we had with a program like that were amazing. I learned so much about sled setup, riding, and then just being smarter out on the track. And then having Nathan Titus there with me was kind of a dream come true, because he's such a legend in the sport, has a long history. So that was cool to learn off of him. I'd ask him all kinds of questions, and he was always there to help me out. We worked our tails off that year, though. I was able to get the sport class season championship that year. I was really happy about that, of course, just because my first championship, and also it being the first year on the Yamaha team, to kind of have that all happen at one time, that was pretty special. Here's the table at the year-end season banquet there. That is my dad to the right, and then a good friend of ours from Wisconsin, Mark Resch. I was teammates with his son, Robbie. And then as you can see, the blue sleds had a pretty successful year that year. I got my championship, but then also podiumed all my other classes too. Top 3 in every class. But all that traveling to and from the race shop that year up to Minneapolis started to get kind of old by the end of the season. So for next season, I would logistically want to do something different. So I got this crazy idea. I wanted to move to Wisconsin. So I really have to thank the Resch family for inviting me up. Up there I stayed with Robbie and then his dad Mark in the last slide. Mark had a house in a really small town of White Lake. Where's White Lake? Pinned right there. Town of about 200 people. Not much happened there at all. If we wanted to do basically anything, we had to drive into Anago, Wisconsin, which is about 15, 20 miles away. Anago is about the size of Spencer. You had to go into town for basically anything decent to eat, any groceries. White Lake had about a gas station. That's it. That was their downtown. We had a pretty good setup though. Mark had a nice house for us to stay in, a nice shop that we could work on all of our stuff. He had a lot of land. We could build our own practice track to be able to ride and practice on every day. Up there, I was even more in the snowmobiling hub. We're about an hour south of Eagle River. So for anybody familiar with the Eagle River area, you know that there's a lot of snowmobiling history around there. Our biggest privilege though was being so close to Yamaha R&D, which is in Minocqua. All really close to the area. That season, both me and Robbie, we were lucky enough to have Patrick Trapp as both of our mechanics. Patrick, he worked full-time at the R&D and then was just nice enough to take on the task of wrenching for us also. Still to this day though, I'd put Patrick down as one of the smartest guys to ever work on a snowmobile. The amount of knowledge he has is unbelievable. That season, he hand-built 2 sleds, one for me, one for Robbie. Every nut, bolt, washer, gasket, hose, everything. Patrick he did all that himself. And then that sled we also still have sitting in our shop today. I don't think that is one my dad will ever get rid of. That one's pretty special. Truly a work of art, I think. Patrick, he hands down built the best performing sleds I've ever ridden. So up there I had everything I could have asked for. Nice house, lots of land for our own personal track, nice shop, awesome people in my corner, except for one thing, snow. Now, our whole plan of me moving up there was to be kind of in the snowy area of the Midwest, because we all know that we don't get much snow down here. And so, of course, typical Mitch Sebastian luck that year was Wisconsin had their record drought snowfall year or something like that. I'm not a meteorologist. All I know is that we didn't get any snow. So that was a real bummer, just because that was, like I said, the whole goal of me going up there was in the snow, be able to ride and practice every day. And I don't think I really got much more seat time than if I would have just stayed around here. But we made the best of it, still had a good year, and it was quite the life experience to go up there also. But after that year, some things kind of started to change around Yamaha. We kind of heard for a while that budget was getting kind of tight, and they were kind of cutting budget from the team. But everything always seemed to work out in the end, and we were still able to go race. But now, some of those talks started to get a little bit more serious. On July 1st, 2016, Yamaha Snowmobiles USA decided to shut the doors. All Yamaha operations are now based out of Canada. And so with that, there went the team. And then at that time, that was really tough because we just raced, but there was a lot of our good friends, they lost their jobs because of this. So that was pretty tough. A lot of people that we got to know over the years, were now out of work because they, made these changes and decided to go that route. So me and my dad, we did a lot of talking on this one. Okay, now what? Things that we know is these blue sleds. We don't know how to work on anything else. So we decided to continue with the Vipers and then just put together our own program for that next year. It wasn't the first time that me and my dad had to figure things out, and I'm sure it wouldn't be the last. We were fortunate enough to get kind of heads up that things were heading south with the team. So we placed a huge spare parts order before the shutdown. Everything that we thought that we might need for the next year. So yeah, we got everything that we could because that last year on the Yamahas, that was completely on our own. We had no support from them. But then, on kind of a positive note, something cool that happened that year that meant a lot to me was I received the Pat Mock Award. Now, Pat Mock, he was one kind of in the early 2000s, kind of took charge and revived cross-country racing kind of here in the U.S. But then Pat, he was tragically killed in a snowmobile accident. So this award was kind of in his honor. Somebody who was dedicated to their racing, hardworking, shows good sportsmanship. So at that time to kind of receive an award like that, that was pretty cool. So now I want to jump ahead to the next chapter. This was my first race I ever did on RCAT. You can see the sled is pretty plain. We kind of wanted to keep it under the radar as we were first starting to learn this sled. But I fell in love with the sled right away. I loved how it handled, me being kind of a smaller guy. The two-stroke fit me a lot better. This was actually towards the end of 2016-17 season, which was kind of fun because we could go kind of back and forth from each brand of sled at that time, kind of ride it whatever I want. Because I really liked how the lighter cat handled through kind of the rough terrain, but then if we were going to like a smoother, faster track, the Yamaha, the four-stroke power, that was the way to go in that situation. So now, this brings us up to just last season, and then I'd say one of the most fun seasons I've ever had, just because of some of the things that I got to experience. Last year we officially jumped onto the CAT program 100%, and I'm definitely happy there. Everybody is great to work with, and their passion for racing is incredible. Last season I didn't really get the best results, what I was looking for, short of my expectations anyway. But the places I got to go and the things I got to experience are things that I'll remember forever. The first one I'd like to talk about is the Sioux I-500. There's a picture of the track. It's just a, or I guess for those of you who aren't familiar with the Sioux, it's unlike any place I've ever been. It's located in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, which I also got pinned up there. It is literally a couple miles from the Canadian border. But the track is a 1 mile ice oval, and the first one to go around that oval 500 times is the winner. Each team has about 2 or 3 riders to split up the 500 laps. There's caution laps, full pit road. You come into the pits for fuel, change your skis for some fresh carbides, make any adjustments you need to the sled, fix any damage you might have got out on the track. We even have radio communication in our helmets so that we can communicate with the team on when to come into the pits. I really compare it to like NASCAR on snowmobiles, just with how the flow of the race is, pit road, everything. The race starts about 10 a.m., runs all day, and then it finishes under the lights. Getting to the Sioux was always a goal of mine from when I first started racing, just because there's so much meaning behind the race. The best of the best come to race the Sioux, so just to be able to compete in it was an honor. I actually had to send in a resume and get a couple references just from people in the industry just to be able to come and race. But the costs of running the race are just crazy. Plus you need to have a purpose-built sled just for that event. So you really have to get invited by a team to go run it. It's pretty much impossible to do it on your own, just from the cost aspect. So last summer, I got a message from Keith Gainsforth. He's out of Michigan. Asked if I'd come ride for him. Of course, I didn't turn that down. I talked to him quite a bit about it just because this would have been my rookie year running it, not knowing what to expect. But right after I committed, called my dad right away. Dad, mark your calendar, we're going to the Sioux. So we packed our bags and headed north. So now, probably the sketchiest part about the Sioux by far is the snow dust. And I got a simple video here. This was just taken off my cell phone in the race. Nothing like going 115 miles an hour down a straightaway with 30 other guys with a blanket over your eyes. Sorry, Mom, you weren't supposed to hear that. So we were up there for the whole week. That whole week is practice and qualifying. I had to do all week a series of rookie practices just because it was my first time up there. We kind of struggled in qualifying, didn't get the best starting spot, but we qualified in. Only 36 sleds are able to qualify into the race. On race day, we were quickly moving up through the pack. Me and Keith, we switched off every 100 laps. During the race, we ended up blowing 2 belts. I believe I was on the sled around 13th with a little over 100 laps to go. And then we lost our second belt. And then you lose, like in a situation like that, you lose so much time because you're just stopped on the side of the track and then waiting for them to come tow you back in, get to the pits, replace your belt, get back out on the track. You lose a lot of laps. So then after that, Keith, he was back on the sled to finish up the race. And then again, we fell back from that. He was coming up through the field, and then with about 20 laps to go, we ended up losing the motor. When the dust settled, we ended up 18th. But like I said, just to be able to come up and race that race, that was a dream come true. And then I've actually been talking with Keith here lately. I have the opportunity to go back up and do it again. He still has some stuff to figure out just to get the team put back together, but if everything works out, hopefully I'll be able to go back. So then as soon as we come back from the Sioux, we're only home for no more than a couple days, and then it was right back to northern Minnesota for the USXC I-500. The USXC I-500 is more your traditional point-to-point cross-country race. And then actually the sled that we have sitting downstairs is the sled that I finished the 500 with just last year. This race is over 3 days. Raced around Thief River Falls, Minnesota, and then down to Bemidji on the final day. Now, I've never raced either of the 500s before last year, and then now we decided to race both of them back-to-back weekends. The two biggest cross-country races there is, I raced about 1,000 miles in the matter of a little over a week. So safe to say, I was ready for a break after that one. The first day of the 500 was a balmy -10 degrees. That first day, I wasn't riding real smart. I think the first day I crashed 3 times. One of them, I kind of yard sailed into some brush and some deep snow. Got my skis all tangled up in the brush, and the sled was just buried. So I lost minutes getting untangled from that one. Getting unstuck from that. Then a little bit farther down the track, crashed again, and I ended up cracking my throttle block or a clamps on your handlebar. So then I had to finish that whole first day with the throttle just kind of loosely spinning on the handlebar. Thankfully, with those dumb mistakes, none of them were real bad, so no damage to the sled, and we're able to keep going. After each day, you're allowed a 1-hour work session to do basically just any maintenance to your sled, any simple things you might have damaged. So we got everything fixed up, and I rode pretty well the last 2 days and then made up a bunch of time. That first day though, I ended up getting some pretty gnarly frostbite. Both sides of my neck were all blistering and black and purple, so that was kind of gross. But the cool thing I enjoyed about the 500 is you're literally racing through all these small towns. You'll see people in lawn chairs out front of their house watching us race by. In a point-to-point cross-country race like this, you're running a lot of trails and ditches. So you'll be literally passing cars down the highway. It's kind of funny to see people's reaction when they get passed by a snowmobile going 80 miles an hour down a ditch. This one was pretty cool for me too. This is Roger Skyme. Roger is one of the original Arctic Cat people, since Arctic Cat was kind of first, since when Arctic Cat was first beginning. Roger still goes to most of the races, and he always likes being right down in the action. And so then as all of us are coming across the line, he's standing there waiting for all of us Arctic Cat racers. When I finished the 500, he was the first one to come see me when I crossed the line. I didn't even have my helmet off yet, and he was already coming up to me to congratulate me on finishing the 500. Something else that I did last year that was kind of cool. One of my good friends, Wade West, he reached out to me for a little project. Wade, he's the old marketing manager at Yamaha. We've worked with Wade for years. Wade, he owns MaxSled, which is just another snowmobile forum. He writes kind of about the latest in the snowmobile industry, how-tos, things like that. For last year, he wanted to have what he called a max racer, somebody that was out racing every weekend and could do little write-ups, give updates on their weekends, almost like a blog type thing, which to be honest, I wasn't super crazy about doing at first, just because I'm not much of a writer, but I'm also not much of a public speaker, but I'm getting through this one also. So, but that was a fun project, and it gave me something to do on the long truck rides back to Iowa. Last thing I guess I want to talk about is the awesome people that help us do this. Since I'm really close to home, I want to put a big emphasis on our local sponsors. Without any of these people, what I do wouldn't be possible. I truly can't thank them enough. Some of these people have been with me from the beginning and still support me today. So I'll ask you guys, if you have the opportunity to support any of these people, please do. If you support them, you're supporting me. They all do amazing things for me, and I want to do what I can to do the same for them. A lot goes getting us to the track, and all of these people make it happen. And then here's kind of a list of our corporate company sponsors. They all play a big role in getting us the parts, equipment, and the correct tools that we need to go race. I know it's kind of cliche, but I truly can't thank them enough. If it wasn't for any of these people, I wouldn't be able to go race on the weekends. So definitely thank you to all those guys. I also have to thank all my friends and family. They support me and what I'm doing, and the crazy schedule that I have. I'm gone almost every weekend. So big thank you to all of you. And then also make sure to check out our social media pages, Mitch Sebastian Motorsports on Facebook, and then Mitch_Sebastian on Instagram. And then thank you to the ISSA and all of you for inviting me out. I hope you enjoyed my story. Thank you.
When's your next race?
First one is scheduled for December 15th in Pine Lake, Minnesota. So hopefully Mother Nature cooperates so we have some cold weather. Actually, the 650 is very important to me. That actually goes way back to when my dad raced. He was number 650, and then when he, my dad can tell you better than me, went to a different series and then had to have a 2-digit, so then he went to 65. So then when I started racing, I was 65, and then when I first started cross country, being like an amateur class rider, I had to go to a 3-digit. So then I brought the 650 back, and then now running semi-pro, it's just, I'm kind of attached to it, so I kept the 650.
Oh. So you race in Wisconsin, Minnesota,
Yeah.
South Dakota?
We actually have a couple races in North Dakota, but yeah, I run the USXC is the National Cross Country Series, which is primarily northern Minnesota. We have a couple regional races that we'll do. There's a regional series out of Wisconsin, of course, Power Sport Series. But yeah, usually northern Minnesota, a couple of North Dakota, kind of in that area.
Do you keep your glasses on when you're racing?
That is a great question. No, I do not. And in years past, I like to think my vision is not too terribly bad. So I've always just been fine. But within the last year, yeah, I've gotten contacts now that I ride with, because I can tell my vision's changing without my glasses. But
What's the average age of the racer?
I'd say,
I'm assuming this is a young man's sport?
yeah. Well, there's classes for literally anybody, all the way up to, I think, there's 120 races, 12 to 13, and then all the way up to, there's like a like Pro-Am, 40, Masters 50 plus. But as far as like pro, semi-pro, yeah, usually everybody's kind of their low to mid 20s, around there. Unless you're like Justin Tate, I think he's like almost 40 and is still running pro class.
Mitch, which do you like better, drag or cross country?
Cross country. I like being able to ride my snowmobile for more than like 5 seconds at a time.
That's straight.
Yeah.
Have you had any injuries since you've been snowmobiling?
Knock on wood, nothing serious. I've been okay, but have witnessed some pretty sketchy stuff. Actually, my teammate Robbie Resch, who I talked about here, it would have been 2016 season. Had a really bad accident. He actually got landed on like his right side and got huge gashes along kind of the side of his body. Broke his arm in a few different spots, had to have like his elbow reconstructed. So we were actually in the Fargo, North Dakota hospital for like 2-3 days. And then that kind of unfortunately ended his racing career. He hasn't raced since then, so that was kind of a bad deal. And then something that also is kind of tough to talk about, and then anybody who kind of follows the racing might have heard, but the Hool family, they're kind of the owners of Speedworks. One of their sons, Hunter Hool, who I raced the same class as me, it would have been 2 years ago now. We were at Pine Lake testing for the season opener, and he actually had a pretty bad crash, hit his head, got knocked out, and then they were flying him to, I want to say it was Minneapolis, but he didn't make it. So we lost Hunter that year. So that was kind of a tough deal. Right at the beginning of the season, so it's kind of tough to go race after you go through something like that. But thankfully, no, I have not had anything serious.
What's the average speed on a cross-country race?
It kind of depends on the track. If it's a lake race, which is just a plowed ice track, like a 10-mile lap, on the straightaways can be anywhere from 106, 107 to 110, kind of depends on the track. But then now, like at the Sioux, where you can have full mod sleds, it's 115, 118. Terrain races, there again, it kind of depends, but 70, 80 or so. All right, yep, thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.